Welcome back to Thisdaylive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News Channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bulitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Modeli Sharafa Yusuf, a veteran broadcast journalist, and Chike Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, Delta State, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, who is joining us online. Well, gentlemen, you listened to that long interview with Modeli. You know, that conversation with
Can you start again?
Femi
Lady
Falana.
and gentlemen.
No, there are no ladies in the media. That was why I said gentlemen.
No, I insist.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the age of correctness, right? And gender, correctness. Now, quickly, we discussed a number of issues with Femi Falana, SAN. And, starting with the ENDSARS protest report, the visit of Antony Blinken to Africa, and also the Nnamdi Kanu issue, and the request that a political solution should be found to the problem. Let me start with you, Chike Ogea.
Well, everything Mr. Falana, SAN, said is in tandem with, everything we've always known about him. He has been one of the most consistent Nigerians, if you ask me, in my generation, in his fight for the rule of law and what is right. Even as young law students, decades ago, shortly after he left university, he was one of the major apostles of the Gani Fawemi School of, civil rights defense and all of that. So I'm not surprised. And, he broke the issues succinctly and concisely as they were. It is a pity that the best efforts, if you ask me, of the Lagos State government, because the governor of Lagos State, as far as I'm concerned, is a young person as well. And you can see someone who, even within, a rotten system, is trying to do the best he can and do the best, and be true to his conscience. It's a pity that, they are trying to muddle up the waters in this way. I think it was last Friday, I was privileged to have stumbled on an interview you had with the president of the Metropolitan Club, which is my club, Alhaji Femi Okunu. And there was something I think I picked up that he said, which resonated throughout the interview. He said, the young people are restless and the old people are angry. And that captures exactly what is going on in the country now. And if you ask me, I thought the whole idea of this panel, just like Femi Falana said, I also know Justice Okwobi. She's of the highest pedigree as a lawyer and as a jurist as well. And I think she discharged her duties very creditably in that panel. And I think that whether that report was leaked or not is neither here nor there. Yes, we have to go through the whole 9 yards, as they say. And, a government white paper, will be released eventually. But I don't see anything that will be radically different. Because just like they said, the leaked reports were just issues of typographical errors and all that kind of thing. In the main, the panel had established the major truths, that there were killings, contrary to what the government said, contrary to what the Minister of Information said. Whether there was 1 killing or 20 killings, 1 killing is one life that is irreplaceable. I think we should always have that in mind. So I'm not even interested in how many people there were. That is one. 2, yes, a mistake was made by ever requesting for the military, if anybody did. Because just like the chief of defense staff was saying, by the time you are inviting the armed forces into a civil protest, then you are saying, you are giving them a caveat emptor to do whatever they want to do, because they are trained to kill. That is their mentality. So we have to understand that. So even in the, series of errors that were made there, Owonikoko as well, I heard part of the interview you had with him as well. I think, for such a very senior lawyer, in fact, there was something he said which resonated with me. He said he was actually the one that gave the idea to Olusegun Obasanjo, president as he was then, to constitute the Oputa panel that he wrote, So for such a cerebral young man, you can imagine how old he was in 1999, to be ahead of his time and think like that. What has happened to him, within this time, and what role exactly is he playing? Yes, he's a lawyer to the Lagos state government, but is he not even going over and beyond his brief in what he's doing? I think it is important that a closure to this should be brought, and it should be brought properly. And I think the Lagos state government should do the right thing. If you ask me, I think they're on the right track. And that was exactly what Femi Falana was also saying when he said it looks like, the federal government seems to be crying more than the bereaved, which is the Lagos state government in this case.
Well, Yemi Adamolekun, your take on some of the submissions by Femi Falana, SAN. Hello, Yemi, are you with us? Hello? Well, looks like Yemi is not ready yet. Let me come to you, Modele Sharafa Yusuf.
The word used by the panel in describing what happened is very haunting. A massacre. A massacre is an indiscriminate and brutal killing of many people. A massacre. And when it is said to have been committed by the armed forces of a country against its citizens, then it has a totally different coloration to it. It's very disturbing that, while we are with the white paper by the Lagos state government, I align myself with what everybody's been saying so far, that whether it is 2 people, as said by Governor Sanwo-Olu, 3 people, as said by the pathologist, wanton killing, as said by the LCC, or 9 people, as said by this panel, 1 person killed by the armed forces is one too many. I'd like to commend first the panel for their hard work and their courage to tell it as it is. They obviously want to have their names written in the in history books as being on the side of truth. I also want to commend Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for giving the committee a free hand to operate, for setting it up in the first place. Remember, though, that this panel was set up even before the Lekki massacre. It was set up the day before the Lekki massacre to find out about what the police, about the issues raised by the protesters, and then their remit was the Lekki massacre thing was added onto their brief after that massacre. And they have, and I think that from all we have seen, Governor Sanwo-Olu seems ready to accept the truth. And I'm also not, I'm convinced that at the end of the day, he will want his name written on the side of truth. He strikes me as a decent human being who wants to do right by the people. He strikes me as a hardworking governor who wants to do right by the people, as I said. Some mistakes might have been made, but as he said when this panel submitted its report, we will know the truth and it will help us to heal. So I'm not worried that something would go amiss between the time the panel's report was submitted and when the white paper will be released. So we await eagerly the white paper by the Lagos state government, and we'll see how we move forward. More importantly, as the learned Silk said, there's not likely to be any difference between what the panel has given and the white paper, especially when it's already in the public domain. So government needs to start working out, how do we bring the culprits to book when the army keeps denying? It is hard, as we know, for any government to stand by and watch the country slide into anarchy, let alone the toppling of a regime by protesters, as the idea that was sold to the president, which apparently led to the deployment of troops. But we need to learn serious lessons from this. Citizens have a right to protest. I would use the pressure cooker analogy that I used about 2 weeks ago today. You let out the steam. People have a right to protest. They need to get their voices heard. My daughter went to protest and I encouraged her because I also realized that young people needed to get more involved. I was heartened by the fact that they were getting more and more involved, even though mistakes were made, and I'll come to that. But what happened? We also should not forget what exactly happened. There were peaceful protests. The introduction of thugs by people suspected to be agents of government. There was the same pattern everywhere. And then the protests turned ugly. The Lekki massacre occurred, and then complete chaos, burning of courts, looting, etc. Lagos state government is yet to recover from the economic losses, the infrastructural losses, and the reputational damage to the government itself. On the part of the protesters, I said I would come back to that. As I said, it was very heartening that young people were getting involved. But anytime I think about the Kenny Rogers song, the famous song, the Gambler comes to my mind. If you're going to play the game, you've got to learn to play it right. You have to know when to hold on. You have to know when to run. You have to know when to give up. If the protesters had come to the table for discussions when the government started making all those concessions, the outcome would have been different from what we had. And that does not in any way excuse what happened on 2010, 2020. Let's be clear about that. But the young people would have been better served if they would have been able to get more by dialoguing with government when those offers were made for dialogue. My commiserations to the family of those who were killed. May their sacrifices not be in vain. And may God comfort their loved ones.
Well, Professor Akintarowa.
Let us put the discussion within the framework of factual content and white paper. What is the nexus between the two? When you engage in content analysis, you will now be dealing with the critical issues raised in the report of the Okuobi panel. Issue of massacre, issue of credibility, issue of the purpose of ENDSARS protests, and so on and so forth. But when you are talking about white paper is not meant to review a factual presentation of an inquiry. White paper has a cardinal objective to look at what part of the factual content should be made known to the public so that national security, maintenance of law and order will be maintained. So in this case, there's no rewriting of the report. Like Shike Ogia mentioned earlier on, and like Omadele also said, we are not likely to play host to discrepancies or more differences between the factual content given to us in the report and what is most likely to be given to us in about a few days' time by the government. First of all, the learned silk, Femi Falana, talked about massacre, that the report in itself has defined itself clearly. Mandela also reminded us that, look, a massacre is about indiscriminate killing. That is the first dynamic, the definition criterion. Indiscriminate killing. Now, when, for instance, the military came to the public to distinguish between live arms and blank bullets, telling us that the soldiers only shot in the air. Now, if blank bullets were shot in the air, we need explanations as to how blank bullets will now come to kill people on the ground floor. Meaning that you have not used the live bullets. You have preserved the live bullets. So if you do preserve the live bullets, then how do they now come to kill people? So this is an evidence, a manifestation of a massacre par excellence. Now, Femi Falana also told us about the credibility of the panel, and I subscribe to it. Who, for God's sake, will say Doris Kobe is not professionally qualified, by way of experience not qualified? When Onikoko will come to the public and be saying, well, the panel, most unfortunately, is incompetent, we need to ask him to redefine the notion, the concept, the etymology of incompetence. Because incompetence becomes ambiguous. Are you talking about professional incompetence in terms of not having the required qualification? He did explain to us that some of the panelists, some of them are not lawyers, and they are not capable, they don't have the capacity, the capability to determine the issues being discussed. But the question to also ask here is that you have some lawyers like Wonikoko, Adegboruwa too was there. You have other lawyers there. So if the other lawyers are disagreeing with you as a senior advocate of Nigeria, what makes you think that you have a more sagacious mind than the other? When you have two lawyers going to the court at any given point in time, all the lawyers will be pretending to have a Solomonic knowledge that they are correct, that they are the proponents of the legal provisions. But you need the intervention of a mediator, the justice, to determine whose case is in this case. So in this case, essentially, I would say that the submission of Femi Falana, I agreed in total. And what we should place emphasis on, why the killing? It's so easy. There are two reasons that deductively we can take on. He told us that President Muhammadu Buhari had the intention, the idea, the knowledge, the education that the ENDSARS protest was meant to oust him, to remove him from power. Deductively speaking, that means giving authorization to the military now to kill them. You kill the people who want to remove you from power. That's the first point. And then on the issue of Igbo leaders visiting, please, there is no other choice than political, because the situation in the country so requires.
We'll come to that in a minute. Well, let's move on to another topic of interest. Antony Blinken made his first trip to Africa last week in a three-country tour of Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal. The U.S. Secretary of State said President Joe Biden will hold a summit on Africa in order to boost cooperation. Mr. Blinken made the comments here in Nigeria at the ECOWAS Secretariat in Abuja on his second day in the country, saying the U.S. is not trying to compete with third parties like China, who have invested huge sums on the continent through his Belt and Road Initiative, because Washington had his own policy when it comes to Africa.
What happens here in Nigeria is felt around the world. And that, in a nutshell, is why I've come to Abuja. The United States knows that on most of the urgent challenges and opportunities we face, Africa will make the difference. As we work to end the COVID-19 pandemic and strengthen global health security, we must work closely with the countries of Africa to build public health systems here that can prevent, detect, and respond to future emergencies. Because, as these past 2 years have taught us, none of us are completely protected unless all of us are protected. As the urgency of the climate crisis grows, our focus will increasingly be on Africa to solve an emergency that threatens our collective security, our economies, and our health. Here, where the potential for renewable energy is greater than anywhere else on the planet, we see not only the stakes of this crisis, but also its solutions.
Secretary of State of the U.S., Antony Blinken, there during his visit to Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal between November 15 and 20. And the main themes of his visit had to do with climate change, COVID-19, the environment, partnership between Africa and the U.S. And there was a reference in the introduction about competition with China. Well, some analysts have raised the point about whether or not this has to do with the scheduled China-Africa summit in Dakar, Senegal, later this month. Professor Akintenewa, what do you think?
What you have just said, I will say again that you cannot be more correct. The issue is that in foreign policy, there is what we call declaratory policy, as distinct from what is obtained on the ground. Now, I think that all the arguments on climate change, COVID-19, partnership, these are normal issues always discussed, always repeated, and they are generally far from the truth on the ground. These are declaratory statements. Now, in this case, let's begin with the relationship between the United States and China within the framework of Nigeria's foreign policy. I think that the visit of Antony Blinken to Nigeria is basically to ensure that the solidarity, the entente cordiale, the partnership between Nigeria and China is made a little bit, they want it to be softened. The issue is that the United States is much concerned about the growing influence of China in Nigeria in particular, and in Africa in general. The United States is not at all comfortable with the way the Chinese are making progress and by implication reducing U.S. influence in Africa. If you look at what the Chinese are doing in Nigeria as of today, U.S. strategic interests are being threatened. So there is the need for Antony Blinken to come to Nigeria at this critical time to discuss on a tete-a-tete basis with Nigerian leaders about their concerns. They may be talking about democracy, they can be talking about COVID-19.
Peak security.
Security, yes. But the bitter truth is that, look, United States and the Chinese are in stiff competition for the leadership of the world. That's the first point. The second point is that the United States does not consider Africa as a strategic continent. Not at all. But the situational reality that this Africa that has been neglected so far in the making of policies in the US is now being dominated by the Chinese, assisted by the Russians, and so on and so forth. That's why they are now looking at it more critically to say, look, let's put more understanding at the level of Africa. And perhaps more significantly, look, what is it that Blinken has been telling us? Initially, ENDSARS protests, the US said there was no cleaning, that everywhere was clean. Now, with this report of the Okuobe panel, they are now saying, oh, okay, if the report is credible, then the Lee law will be applied. Change of position. The United States is changing position because it is now looking at the temperature, the attitudinal disposition of the people of Nigeria. And they cannot act contrarily to the belief of the people.
Well, but Prof, the point must be made, though, that in Senegal, which was the last stop for the Secretary of State, he made the point that Africa is important, not just to the United States, but to the rest of the world. compelling, our own foreign minister, Geoffrey Onyama, to say that, well, it's very interesting to see that Africa is a beautiful bride, that is being wooed.
I am very happy you are in the presidency under Goodluck Jonathan. I'm very happy you played an active part. You see, I love diplomatic statements, always beautifully made. Why the choice of Senegal? Why the choice of Nigeria? And why the choice of Kenya?
Well,
so when you look at
isn't this in furtherance of President Biden's promise that he will make Africa a major partner as soon as he has.
You have gone to Libya, you have gone to Ethiopia, you have gone to. I'm asking why Senegal, why Nigeria, why Kenya? You will not discover that
Kenya has general elections, presidential elections in 2022. That's next year. And then Kenya is in a troubled zone with problems in Eritrea, Ethiopia and Somalia, and also in Sudan. And then, of course, in Senegal, so there are security issues. And Senegal has the anti-2 pasteur, right? Trying to manufacture COVID vaccines. So these are some of the things. Chikejua, let me come to you.
Well, it was clear to me that it is a new day, as it were, because I recall that it wasn't too long ago when Trump's Secretary of State came into Africa and didn't even bother to look at us. At that time, I thought, how low had we sunk? But it is heartwarming to know that the realities of the day, just like Femi Falana said, it is about the people. It's the resolve of the people at the end of the day. When the people go in a direction, both the government and its foreign partners, will have no choice but to back the people. But coming to the major meat of the thing, what is happening now, because I'm a student of history, history was one of my best subjects when I was in school, for my A-levels and all of that. I remember there was a topic we treated then, which was the scramble for Africa then, when the French and the British, were carving up the whole place. And I think what we are seeing now is it's a modern-day struggle for Africa, but this time between the Chinese and the Americans, obviously, in terms of the sphere of influence. China obviously has a very, very aggressive policy now of giving out cheap loans to, African countries, helping them ramp up in their infrastructural developments. Of course, these agreements that they used to back up these issues have been complained about, where we see major pieces of infrastructure being lost to them when they're unable to pay. But that it's also a matter between those countries, and China. But obviously, the Americans are getting jittery, just like Prof was alluding to the fact now. And they want a reversal in that kind of thing. But what are they offering? They have to bring something to the table. Because whether we like it or not, we are seeing in Nigeria, like this government, don't like this government, we can see, quantifiable things, especially in railway and a few other things, of which these loans, have been assisting us. Then, of course, one of the major issues that they talked about was the climate change. And, that's such a reality now. We are having rains. In fact, it rained in Lagos today again. Today is November, almost, we're getting to December. So we can see that the whole world, and we have to be prepared for what is happening. So I think that is major, of course, at the back of COVID-19 as well. So these are the major issues. And of course, very, very important is the issue of security. All those Tucano jets they have been promising, they have been supplying. We have to finish and close up on all of that so we can have, a major strategy and have the equipment to back us up in our fight against terrorism, especially in the Northeast. So I think it was a welcome visit. I think we are slowly getting back to the driving seat, thanks to China, and the Americans are sitting up.
Well, Yemi Adamolekun, I understand that you've joined us now. We've taken two major subjects, the ENDSARS panel report and also the visit of Antony Blinken to African states, including Nigeria. Your take quickly on those two topics.
Thank you very much. Sorry, technology was doing its best. On ENDSARS, two things, most of the things have been said, but two things particularly I'd like to highlight is the issue of state versus federal. So I think we shouldn't forget that at that time, Nigerians were protesting against the police. And I can say, at least from my experience, the police at the point, and even till now, quite frankly, their posture was, you want us scrapped, you want us fined, then in a sense, police yourselves, protect yourselves. So to a degree, quite honestly, I can understand how Governor Sanwo-Olu can make a request for backup in calling the army. But I really do not believe that he then had the powers, and I think Mr. Falana made the point very clearly, that the only person who then has the powers to deploy the army and give them marching orders, i.e. then tell them what to do, is the commander-in-chief. So I think it's extremely significant that we park that blame squarely where it lies, and that's with President Buhari. Now, at the time that he gave the orders, sequence of events, if they told him he was being overthrown at the time, but he later stated that that was the case, and he hasn't gone back to review that. So now that the panel report is out, for me, I'm really very interested in seeing how state versus federal play out, because I can understand quite a bit of tension, because literally what Lagos State is saying from the panel is that the federal government lied, that Lai Mohammed lied, that President Buhari was lied to. So having now presented the facts of the matter, then the response should be, the appropriate response is what we're waiting for. And I dare say that the signaling which also contributed to the protest, Lieutenant Colonel Bello, who led the charge, even if he was up for promotion, in any government that wants to show that we care about these issues, his promotion papers should have been put on hold till the panel report was out, just to show that we're actually paying attention. And the second point that I'd like to point on for ENDSARS is the issue of dialogue. I slightly disagree with Ms. Modele. I'm not quite sure what was there to dialogue on. The demands, 5 for 5 demands that young people had were very clear. You had police officers that were indicted, prosecute them. There are already files on them. Establish a council for the National Human Rights Commission so they can do their job. It wasn't done until this year. Release all protesters, they're still in jail 1 year later. So I struggle to understand what there was a need to dialogue on. And I think that's what young people's posture was at the time. Our demands are very clear. You show good faith by actually doing something about what we've asked. And we can see very clearly that 1 year later, government is still very focused on changing the narrative around the protest and managing the protest, killing protests and all of that, rather than solving the problem of police reform and poor governance. And Blinken's visit, I think it's really very interesting. America gets to travel and stop in Kenya, stop in Nigeria, because they are promoting democracy. The giants of Africa, if we really had a house in order, we would be the ones hopping to Ethiopia to make peace, going to Senegal to do something funky. But I mean, America does what it does. It's interesting that under Trump they didn't come, but now they're coming. But I think for me, it's just the visits just reflecting the red carpet treatment we give to Western countries who are, in a sense, here to further their own interest without any apology, so to speak. And we get to analyze why they come and visit us. Thanks.
Yes, well, just before we move on, somebody just sent me a text, a rebuttal to something Mr. Femi Falana said. He said Falana lied. Well, Falana is not available on the program to defend himself on this. But what the person said is when Professor Obafunwa, I guess that's the chief pathologist for Lagos State, when he said that at the sitting that 3 bodies were brought from Lekki, the report, the media reported that he said Lekki Toolgate. He kicked and the panel warned against sensational reporting. The man said Lekki area, not Toolgate. Now Falana is saying the man confirmed 3 deaths. In fact, the report contradicts itself in this area and several others. Falana won't have any of that, the person says. But I'm sure, okay, Prof, you want to defend Mr. Femi Falana.
It is very interesting that the interlocutor is talking about Lekki Toolgate and Lekki area. In which way are you going to say Lekki Toolgate is not part of a Lekki area? No, you see, the way we discuss in this country, we have understood that one. Falana is simply saying that the Lagos State pathologist came up with an argument that a case of death has been recorded. They brought that one. So whether it is precisely now at a point in Lekki Toolgate or in the area, wouldn't remove of the fact that a case of killing had been recorded. And please, what Femi Falana is trying to say, and corroborated by Adegborua in this particular case, is that if the Lagos State government could send a lawyer to protect, to defend its own interest in the same court, now it will be very wrong for the same Lagos State government to be a judge in its own case, first of all. And in this particular case, all these sentiments we are trying to bring there, Chike mentioned it, Modele mentioned it. The mere fact that the military, the army, could go there with live ammunition in itself fundamentally wrong and criminal.
Well, let's take our next topic. The International Monetary Fund has advised the federal government of Nigeria to completely remove subsidies on fuel and electricity early next year. The IMF, in a statement, said Nigeria should implement revenue-based fiscal consolidation, stressing the need to fully remove fuel subsidies and move to a market-based pricing mechanism, as stipulated in the 2021 Petroleum Industry Act. The Bretton Woods institution says the country needs major reforms in fiscal exchange rate, trade, and governance to promote sustainable growth. Well, one of those subjects that Femi Falana SAN addressed. But Yemi Adamolekun, let me start with you.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising. America says that. We did a structural adjustment program under Babajide, and we've been dancing around subsidies, especially around fuel, for quite a while. Unfortunately, you can't have a meaningful conversation around subsidies and managing how a state engages its citizens in sort of a social welfare construct without a state that has a clear vision or a clear plan. So the IMF, the World Bank can pop in because they are lending us money and they see things sort of macroeconomically and understand the damage that our energy policy is doing to our economics. Because as a Commissioner of Finance once said, you can't be
Oh, we seem to have lost connection with Yemi Adamolekun there again. Well, Chike Ogia, let me come to you quickly.
Well, in the case of the IMF, you know, one of the die-in-the-wool Bretton Woods institutions, of course, they have this clear concept of how they think, you know, African countries should manage itself. The case of these subsidies have been one of the stickiest points for me, and I think the government should be extremely careful in how it handles it. There's a good side and there's a downside to it. The downside is that in the country as we speak now, where we have absolute no safety valves for, you know, the very, very underprivileged and poor people, we know that the mass of our people are hopelessly poor, and we have no kinds of benefit that is going to help them, you know, for the derivatives of what they need. They don't even need it for their cars and all of that. So if you tax the rich, those that have 5 cars, 10 cars and all of that, that's fine. But for those that need some derivatives from kerosene and other issues to power their little generators and all that, there might be an issue. I know the government is talking about putting out some kind of cushions here and there. I don't think they've worked that out yet, but that would be vital to see how they'll do that. Then the other side of it is that fossil fuels are actually going out of fashion. Very soon, nobody's going to require them anyway, you know. So this one commodity we have that is our all and all, it's becoming a bit worthless right here, you know, in our presence. I mean, go to Europe now, go to Dubai, go anywhere now. You don't see cars that, in fact, they don't let those kind of cars that use fuel on the roads anymore. You pay tax to drive a car like that into the West End of London and all of that. So it's an interesting thing, but it's something that needs to be done because the distortions to the economy from these subsidies, and especially with the corruption that goes into it, needs that something really needs to be done about it. And that's why I think, you know, ordinarily I think the government had said that sometime, I don't know what month, in 2022.
July 2027.
That, you know, yes, that it will go anyway. So I think they have ample time between the central bank, who seem to be the coordinating arm of this government, you know, the Ministry of Finance, maybe the National Planning Commission. They can sit down together as a tripartite body and really work the nitty-gritty of this. That is what we need. Yeah.
Modele, over to you.
Beyond what the IMF is saying, I'm more concerned about the issue of subsidy itself, which has been one of Nigeria's biggest and longest running headaches. First of all, is there really, where is the subsidy coming from? If there's really subsidy, then there's fiscal rascality going on somewhere because it is not in the budget. Where's the money? I mean, appropriation is the duty of the National Assembly, so says Section 80, subsection 4 of the Constitution. So it is, where is this money coming from? Because that money is not appropriated for, the government has been calling it all kinds of names: under recovery, value shortfall. At the end of the day, this money is still coming from the purse of the federal government, because with no provision for petroleum subsidy in the budget, the NNPC has resorted to direct deductions from its remittances to the Federation Account Allocation Committee. The fact these deductions affect revenue accruable to the Federation, and it is distorting the economy. Government's duty is to take the tough decisions. The duty of our leaders is to take the tough decisions. We have been talking about the removal of petroleum subsidy for a long time. Chike talked about there being no safety valves for the poor people. That is true. But remember, the commodity that is being used by the poor people is the DPK, the kerosene. And government removed the subsidy a long time ago. If you remember, around 2014, government was said to be paying about 700 million naira every day on kerosene subsidy. At that time, kerosene was supposed to be selling to the populace at 50 naira. But I know, because I was in that business at that people were not buying kerosene at 50 naira. They were buying kerosene at 150 naira, between 100 and 150 naira, depending on the market situation at the time. So government removed the subsidy on kerosene, and we've had peace since that time. There's been there's no subsidy on AGO, which is what powers the mass transportation, mass transit buses and things that the real poor people use. Diesel has been deregulated a long time ago. I mean, it's ridiculous what it's costing. But the point is, if this petroleum subsidy is unsustainable, as we have been made to understand, can government remove this subsidy and let's have some, and then provide palliatives to the people, you know, that can cushion the effect of all of what would happen eventually. That said, it's very tempting to tell the IMF to mind their own business, because they're always coming up with all of these ideas. As Yemi said the other time, they came up with the structural adjustment program. That has been one of the biggest problems of the Nigerian economy since 1986 when it was introduced. I think we should find our own path to economic prosperity. I think the government should be allowed to think through this. It's also not impossible, though, that the Nigerian officials might be hiding behind the IMF while making these suggestions, in order to make these suggestions more palatable to the people. Or maybe the IMF think that they have the greater moral authority to push for reforms, but we haven't quite forgotten, as I said, how the structural adjustment program panned out. But that said, the subsidy thing has to be solved one way or another. And I have a feeling that it will be removed. Government should just do more to soften the effect of these on the people.
Well, Professor Akintenewa, you recall that during the 27th Nigeria Economic Summit a few months back, this issue came up, and that was when the Minister of Finance pointed out that Nigeria would, by June 2022, invest enough to the tune of about 2.9 trillion naira to cover subsidies. But now you have the World Bank saying no, that second quarter target is not meaningful. What is the rush all about?
You see, the problem, stricto sensu, is not about subsidy, actually. Professor Tam David West carried out an analysis on the cost of production of a liter of petrol. And by that time, the issue of increase in the fuel price was raised. And his focus was to say, no, there was no justification for whatever price. He even noted that the issue of a subsidy had a sort of quote-unquote key leg. In other words, there is a fraudulent approach to it. People were asking, was there really any subsidy at any point in time? Amandele was talking about the issue of no vote, specifically for things like this. Where is the source of this particular man? Now, how do we reconcile this hypothesis of fraud, corruption, on the one hand, with the poverty of the people, with the insolvency of the people, inability, for instance, to buy what they need for their survival? So we are confronted with a situation of how to reconcile fraudulent policy or approach, fraudulent subsidy, with inability to, the factor of insolvency. Now, in this case, when a suggestion was made at the 27th Economic Summit that this matter should be addressed in the second quarter of 2022, and the IMF is now saying, no, let us have it in the first quarter. The issue is that, look, here, IMF has its own strategic agenda. And in this particular case, only God knows what they have in mind by insisting that it will be first quarter.
Okay, let's now take our final topic for the day. Africa's most populous country, Nigeria, plans to expand the COVID-19 vaccination program beyond health facilities with an ambitious goal to inoculate 50% of the population before February 2022. On Friday, a mass COVID-19 vaccination campaign was launched in Abuja in an attempt to prevent any rise in cases of coronavirus with dozens waiting to receive the jab of AstraZeneca and Moderna vaccines at Eagle Square. While Nigeria is aiming to reach herd immunity, which is 200 million population, It has only administered 9.1 million doses out of 19 million so far received, including 3.2 million given as second shot, according to the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, NPHCDA. Executive Director Faisal Shaibu says the government is making efforts to engage key players, including religious leaders and civil society organizations, to increase the number of people vaccinated.
Been able to secure up to 100 million doses of the vaccines. So we expect that with 2 doses, that approximates to about 50 million Nigerians, right? And when we know that we're going to be targeting 112 million Nigerians, that's right around 50%.
Okay, Chike Ogia, let me start with you. Mass vaccination program to ramp up the vaccination rates in Nigeria. And there's clear assurance that we have enough AstraZeneca and Moderna vaccines to be able to achieve this in different parts of the country, including motor parks, pharmaceutical units, and elsewhere.
Yeah. COVID-19, that was Nigerians' wake-up call, if you ask me. And even in the statement, the Secretary of State said he actually, the matter has dawned on the whole world that this is a one for all for one thing, and he talked about it, that no one is protected if everybody is not protected. And I think, that is the catch-22 in that. So nobody can escape that. Yes, we have a large population, which on a good day is a big advantage. But for the first time, we can see we are struggling with that. We've administered about 9-point-whatever million, and we're still very, very, far away from the target. And it is worrying because people that are fully vaccinated are catching the virus. There's even a fear of another major wave that will break, anytime now. And this is worldwide, not only here. Travel now, international travel, though has picked up, but it's a nightmare. You get into airports, you land in airports, and before you even cross immigration, you are doing COVID tests. The only good thing is that most of these airports, in places like Doha or Dubai or in Europe, are so well organized that even though you see the mass of people coming out of various aircrafts, within short time, they get their quick rapid test and they keep going. If we tried something like that at our airport, I've thought about it. It's going to be, the confusion will be incredible. But, with all of this, because commerce, business, trade, everything has to move. Just the other day, I saw your reporters, Akinsoyan, what's the other gentleman's name? They were in Durban.
Olsen, Omofai,
exactly. They were in Durban because, these things have to go on. And even South Africa is not out of it. So there's still that fear. Everybody's still going around with that fear that anything could still happen. But the idea is that I'm happy that we've made all these arrangements, based on what, the chairman of the committee is saying. And we have all these vaccines we're expecting. And I can tell you again that most organizations, at least the ones I'm affiliated with thousands of workers, are insisting that workers cannot come in without getting vaccinated. And a lot, in fact, in all my organizations, all our workers are being vaccinated. So I know the vaccines are readily available as we speak now, all over Lagos. And I hope all over Nigeria as well.
Well, thank you, Chike Ogia. But quickly, we have just about 3 minutes to go. Modele Sharafa Yusuf.
Beyond vaccination, people should please go and get vaccinated. It's very important. But as Chike pointed out, even those who are vaccinated still can catch the virus. It only makes it not that hard on their system. makes it easier for them to deal with. But as I said, beyond vaccination, people need to keep observing the COVID protocols. Please wear your masks. I don't know why it's so difficult to tell people to wear their masks. People are still carrying on like there's nothing, like nothing is going to happen. Please maintain the distance between yourself and the next person. And we need to ask people to keep washing their hands. I think it's if you try to persuade people to do what is right, it's only right that, and they don't listen, it's only right that you force them to do it. And I think that's what government is doing. People need to be forced to go and take these vaccines because it saves lives.
Well, Professor Akintenwa, the last word.
Nigeria should not expect to survive on the basis of donations of vaccines for Nigerian people. They should try as much as possible to also produce locally vaccines. Secondly, since we have been told that taking vaccination does not prevent new infections, and we are now talking about the fourth wave, I think that the government of Nigeria should prepare for the fourth wave. And finally, on this point, Nigeria, many hospitals like Lut is taking 50,000 naira for PCR for one person. What is it they are doing with this money?
Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintenwa.
That's actually counterproductive because people need to get tested. Testing is part of the protocols that need to happen to prevent this from.
Well, thank you, Modele. Thank you, Chikogia and Yemi Adamolekun.